With the winter meetings going on right now, it's tough to say where the Mariners stand in terms of acquiring high talent. And as of right now, it's also hard to see where this team's going to get better to the point where they can compete for a division. The Astros just signed Jose Abreu. The Rangers just signed Jacob deGrom. The Angels went out and got Hunter Renfroe and Tyler Anderson, which in my opinion doesn't necessarily make them a contender. But needless to say, the Mariners getting Teoscar Hernandez and Colton Wong, it's just not enough. Every single team in the American League West has gotten better, except for, of course, the Athletics. And it's hard to imagine the Mariners, who just made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, are now gonna not try and get even better than they already were. I do expect them to make some more additions. I expect them to add some sort of outfielder in left field. But the problem is, they're not going after huge name players when they have the money to do so. Listen, Jerry Dipoto said, well, we don't want to really worry about 2026's contracts, blah, blah, blah. For a team that just made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, I can tell you, there is not a single fan that gives a damn about 2026 contracts. They want to be in the playoffs again next year. They want to experience more than one home game in the playoffs. And what's interesting to me is Jerry Dipoto's unwillingness to realize that the Mariners' contracts aren't really going to be that bad in 2026. Looking at the Mariners payroll for 2023 at this very moment, it's at $132 million. Now the luxury tax threshold is $233 million. Of course, that means the Mariners have $100 million to spend if they wanted to before they hit that luxury tax and need to start worrying about it. And in my opinion, there's no reason that they shouldn't. The Mariners make billions of dollars a year, and I think that the fact they're not going after these big name players is a problem to me. So let's take a look at the 2026 payroll and kind of see what it is Jerry's looking at. As it stands right now, the 2026 payroll is right around $97 million. And the only guaranteed contracts that the Mariners have right now is Robbie Ray, Luis Castillo, Julio Rodriguez, and J.P. Crawford. Those four are the only guaranteed contracts to see. Then we have a club option for Evan White and Andres Munoz. We can see these top three players here accounting for over 20% of the payroll, although 18, 22, and 25 isn't that much. If you look at, for example, the Rangers signing Jacob deGrom, they signed him to a $37 million a year deal, along with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien also taking up a lot of the payroll. Now this $97 million doesn't include all of these arbitration eligible players. Of course, we have Jared Kelenic, Taylor Trammell, all these guys that should be in arbitration at this point. Theoretically, by 2026, Ty France would also be gone at this point, along with some other players, and the Mariners of course could extend these guys and give them decent contracts, but even then it should not stop them from spending money. If we look at the 2025 payroll, here's the deal. The 2025 payroll puts us at about $120 million right now. Okay, so that's less than we have at the moment in 2023, but you also have a $15 million option on Marco Gonzalez and a $15 million option on Eugenio Suarez. And you even have a player option for Robbie Ray, where he could possibly decline it for $25 million, although I highly doubt he would, but nonetheless. Marco and Eugenio both account for 12.4% of the payroll in 2025, and these are options that you could decline. I would say the option on Marco is definitely going to be declined in 2025 if he's even still in Seattle. So that's $15 million freed up right there. Suarez, it's hard to say. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. We'll have to see where some players are at. Maybe the Mariners sign Rafael Devers, huh? Not a bad idea. But you free up $30 million right here if you just decline both of these contracts, putting you back under $100 million. Of course, again, we have to look at players that would be getting arbitration. Ty France would probably be upwards of $10 to $15 million in arbitration. We have Logan Gilbert and Cal Raleigh in ARB1, and these guys aren't going to be making a ton in ARB1. And then you still have decent players under pre-arb with Penn Murphy, George Kirby, Matt Brash, Brennan Bernardino's pre-arb at that point. We still have guys in early arbitration like Cal Raleigh, Matt Festa, Taylor Trammell, and it's just hard to believe that the Mariners don't want to spend money when these guys are still pre-arbitration eligible and early arbitration eligible. The money goes up in this game every single year. We have seen rising contracts every single year. Every year we see a new highest paid contract in baseball history going on. And it's just hard to believe the Mariners are worried about a couple $1 million here and a couple $1 million there. And I think that's why it makes these club options so very important. For Marco specifically, $15 million. In my opinion, there's a 0% chance they would accept that and bring Marco back for 2025. So they're just going to drop him right then and there. That's $15 million that you can go out and use on a Rafael Devers or someone in 2024. And again, somebody like Evan White, I mean, he has barely played at the major league level. He's still getting paid $7 or so million a year. And who knows where he'll be at this point. But realistically, if that's the case, then you could just drop him for the 2026 salary and get $10 million right then and there. For a Mariners team that just made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, it is mind-boggling to me that they don't want to go out and raise payroll even more. Again, at the moment, including arbitration-eligible players, the Mariners have $132 million set up for their players. The active payroll for the Mariners is $89 million, and then the estimated arbitration salaries put you right around $31 million. Then you add pre-arb salaries and of course retained salary from Robinson Cano, and that's how you end up with $132 million on this next year's salary. And it's just mind-boggling to me that the Mariners don't want to go out and add maybe another $30 million to that, whether it be by signing one of the big name free agents, or if it be by going out and acquiring a couple different players that maybe wouldn't cost that much. Let's look at Andrew Benintendi, let's look at Brandon Nimmo even at that point. And it's just surprising to me that as all the teams around you make these big moves, and as you have this great team to build around, all these players that need to be taken advantage of, because obviously we've seen somebody like Felix Hernandez go throughout his entire career and not have the right pieces put around him to make the playoffs. Sure, it's easier now than ever to make the playoffs with the extra playoff teams, but with that being said, do you want to just make the playoffs on the fringes every couple years, or do you want to be a dynasty team like the Astros, like the Dodgers, someone who is constantly there, and you can see based on their attendance numbers, so on and so forth, that these are teams that are getting people's butts in the seats. You're making more money by spending more money. Dipoto and Hollander said that they do want to go out and lengthen the lineup even more than they already have, but what exactly does that mean? Are you saving all this money for a Devers and Ohtani run? Are you saving all this money to give John Stanton a better Christmas present? Who really knows? At this point in the offseason, I say the Mariners definitely need to go out and re-sign Mitch Haniger. I wouldn't mind them signing another 2 outfielders, maybe trading Jarred Kelenic, Taylor Trammell, or even giving Jarred Kelenic the left field job, bring back Mitch Haniger and have them all rotate through. I'm not terribly adverse to that, but you still end up with probably less than $145 million spent. And while I understand that signing Trey Turner would make it basically $162 million they've already spent, which is more than we've really ever seen them spend on their payroll, it's just time to go out and spend money on these marquee players and make yourself a dynasty team. You don't see someone like the Dodgers worry about signing a big name player because you know what? They're going to throw money at it. And I promise you, the Mariners, no matter what they say, they can afford it. They're just choosing not to. Every single baseball team can afford this, except for maybe the Athletics, because their attendance numbers are abysmal. But every single baseball team can afford to sign these players to a much bigger contract, but they choose not to because they want to keep their money around while they can. Now, I am not saying the Mariners need to go out and sign Justin Verlander and Aaron Judge. That would be just incredibly stupid of them. However, I do think they need to be making more impactful decisions than trading for Kolten Wong. In terms of his offensive prowess, Kolten Wong was probably pretty low on my list, and I don't really see him as all that much better than somebody like Adam Frazier. Maybe he's just more consistent, but I don't know. Kolten Wong is nothing more than a glorified Adam Frazier to me. I think Julio Rodriguez in center, Teoscar Hernandez in right is a great start. I do think that left field could be given to Jarred Kelenic, but you need to sign somebody else in that place that can play DH as well as the outfield as well, and I think Mitch Haniger fits that role pretty good. Of course, if the Mariners wanted to be a little bit more flashy, they could go out and get Brandon Nimmo, and I talked about that in this video here. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners!